Welcome, parents, back to another conversation starter. We're glad that you have joined us this week. We got Dawson again. You guys know him by now already. Yeah. And I'm Mario. So just a quick update before we actually go into what we talked about at youth group yesterday. It wasn't last week, yesterday. So this coming Sunday, there will be no youth group. This coming Sunday is Easter Sunday. So we don't want to have youth group that Sunday. You guys hang out, all of the families come together for the morning service, but then go off and spend Easter Sunday together. Don't worry about youth group. And so won't have youth group this coming Sunday. We will pick up again that next Sunday after Easter Sunday. Mm-hmm. And so that's just so that you guys know. I'll also be sending you a text message just to remind you later in the week. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have a whole lot of kids this past youth group.
No. Hopefully this allows the kids that weren't there to catch up.
The kids who weren't there, I'm jealous because they were at the Cavs game, some of them. But this would be a great time for them to get a refresh. So parents, watch this with your kids. If they weren't at youth group, this would be super helpful. We kind of clumped in a bunch of chapters. Mm-hmm. So it was actually Genesis 23 to Genesis 27. Mm-hmm. But we really only focused on 25, where a main bulk of the story of our focus was Jacob and Esau, two sons of Isaac, who is the son of Abraham.
Yeah, the promised child.
The promised child, right? And he's older now. He's 60 years old. He has these kids, these teenage kids. Mm-hmm. And you just kind of see a bunch of family dysfunction. Mm-hmm. You see, they're picking favorites of their children right off the bat. The two kids cannot be more different. Mm-hmm. Esau's an outdoors guy. He's a hunter. Mm-hmm. And then Jacob is an indoor dweller. He loves to just be inside, and he likes to cook and all this different stuff. But Esau, who was the older brother, had the benefit of a birthright in that culture. And the story is he comes in from hunting and he sees that his brother's making stew. Mm-hmm. And he wants the stew very badly.
Very badly.
Very, very badly.
Yeah.
And Jacob sees that he really wants the stew, and he's exhausted. Mm-hmm. And he sees that he's really frazzled and he really, really wants this thing. Yeah. He's like, okay, but sell me your birthright.
Yeah.
And Esau's like, well, what's a birthright to me? I'm about to die. You know what I mean? It's super dramatic.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're okay.
Yeah, and it's the first thing Jacob says to him.
Yeah.
He says, give me some of that stew. And Jacob says, first, swear to me that you're giving me your birthright.
Swear it to me.
Jacob was like that. He
jumped on it.
He knew Esau was going to give it up. He knew Esau was really undervaluing what he had.
Yeah.
And he was very... Yeah. Jacob's a funny character because he's Israel. He's the father of this nation.
Yeah.
But as a kid, he was very deceptive.
Yes.
And he lied.
His beginnings were very bad. Yeah. And we did read. So you have this instance where Jacob, I guess, I wouldn't really honestly say steals the birthright. He convinces...
Kind of tricks him.
Tricks him. Yeah. He deceives his brother into giving him his birthright.
Yeah.
And, but then in 27, he does the same thing with the advice of his mother to the blessing from his dad, that goes with the birthright.
Yeah.
And we looked at that too. We read that because they kind of go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. You see Jacob's deception and his willingness to kind of just steal from his brother.
Yeah.
These things that...
Yeah, he's very willing to take from him.
These things that don't belong to him.
Yeah.
They don't belong to him. Mm-hmm. And so, it's a mess. Mm-hmm. It is an absolute mess. And we talked about, one of the points was family dysfunction. We don't have perfect families.
Yeah.
Isaac didn't have a perfect family. He was a promised child. If anyone was to have a perfect family, he would have, but he didn't.
Yeah.
His family was still susceptible to sin. But I was telling and encouraging the students that their value and how God sees them and their purpose isn't robbed from the imperfections of our family life.
Yeah.
Or whatever's happening in a family, whatever it is, even if it's just little mistakes or imperfections and stuff, or even really big things, it never robs God's plan for our life.
Yeah.
But really the bulk of it was this idea of you have this very valuable thing. Esau has this very valuable thing. And in a moment of weakness, he was able and willing to trade it for something for far less value because he didn't see value in this thing.
Yeah, it's almost like, again, it's very funny because it's stew. Like he comes in and Jacob is cooking.
Yes.
He comes in from hunting for food, and Jacob is cooking food, and Esau is just like, I'm gonna die. I don't need this birthright.
Yeah.
Take it. Only to then later, I think it's in 27 or 28, he's like begging Isaac. He's like, give me back my birthright. Give me back
in 27,
my blessing. And Isaac can't because he had this thing. He didn't know how valuable it was. And he just kind of threw it away, only to later realize what it actually was and how valuable it was.
Yeah.
Which, is a very relatable. Obviously, for us, it's not always stew or whatever that we're trading away these promises for. But the concept of having a promise and being so focused on something that's right in front of you that the promise kind of fades out of your point of view.
Yep.
And Esau was very susceptible to that.
Yeah. I mean, I really think and I think that's a good point of like, Esau literally came in from hunting.
Yeah.
He had food with him.
Yeah.
But he wanted the stew.
Yeah, for whatever reason.
He wanted that stew.
Yeah.
And he wanted it so bad that he was willing to trade even his birthright.
Yeah.
And I just think it's like, that's temptation to me. Like that is like, we gave the example of like cheating on a test in school.
Yeah.
Like you don't know the answer to a test, but you see a cheat sheet on your friend's desk right next to you. Yeah. The temptation to look and just glance.
Yeah, and it's right there.
It's right there. Yeah. It's in your face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even though, I mean, it's a little different, but
it also shows the pattern of sin because like he's tired, he's weak. Like Jacob doesn't trick him at his moment of strength where he's just been told what the birthright is, where he like Esau isn't at this like peak strength where he knows the value of the birthright. He's weak. He probably hasn't even thought about his birthright for a long time,
or at all.
And he's weak and he's exhausted, and that's when Jacob is like able to deceive him so easily.
Yeah,
is because he's not thinking about the value of what he has.
Yeah.
He's thinking about how good
the stew
looks.
I want the stew.
Yeah. So it's a really good picture of how sin kind of jumps on us. Because, again, like Esau wasn't at top strength. Because if he was, he probably wouldn't have cared about the stew that Jacob had.
He would have made the food that he just
brought
in.
His own food,
I think that is, I mean, there's just so many lessons in the story, and we didn't get to all of the lessons, but that was the main lesson of like in a moment of weakness, we will be tempted to give up the things or trade the things that God has given us that have eternal value for something of far less value or no value at all. I mean, anything sin-wise doesn't have any value. I mean, there's no value in sin.
Something that has nothing to it. And we're just jumping on it,
Jumping on it. So there's a quote that I'm going to read for you parents. I didn't read it to the kids, but I think it would give kind of a good framework of everything that we're saying. It's from a commentary, and it's on this specific passage on Esau and Jacob. And it says, things of great spiritual value are often mishandled in profane or crafty ways. Some people treat spiritual and eternal things with contempt, for they see them as of no value. So again, like if we don't see the value in what Christ has given to us, the peace, joy, grace, freedom, all of these benefits of obedience, if we don't see any value in it, then in a moment of weakness when something of less value seems very, very appetizing, and it's just stew, but it's that stew.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So Like it even says at the end that Esau despised his birthright. Like
Yep.
he valued it so little, not just to trade it for the stew, but he just saw nothing of worth in it when Jacob asked about it. Like, you know, how often do we do that with these promises that we're given daily? You know?
Yeah. Man, it's good, but it's also, I mean, it's hard because, I mean, it's in our own hearts and we recognize that, we know that, but it's good to recognize that and good to know that.
Yeah.
And we did get on some conversation about shame and the difference between shame and guilt.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have grace in Jesus, so when we do trade these things for lesser things, God has grace when we turn to Him and repent.
But it is all very big, scary stuff
It
at
is.
times.
It can be very scary, but it's also very real. And students are not immune to this. If anything, like the enemy is going after your students even more because it's at this point where they're very easily confused. They're very easily susceptible to certain things. They haven't really formed they're just starting to form their own opinions on things. And so, you know, all the more reason to help them understand these kinds of things. So we just got 2 questions for you guys to help with engagement for your student.
Yeah, and this first one is more about identifying. So we didn't want it to feel, again, we've said this before, we don't want these conversations to feel like an interrogation. So this is about helping your student identify value. And so ask them what are some things of eternal value, get some answers on that. And then what are some things of worldly value or less value or no value or however you want to phrase it. Just to help them get that perspective of like, okay, this is what matters, this doesn't matter. And it doesn't have to be overly specific but like if they want to share, that's great. If you want to share, that's great.
I would definitely say, you know, guide your student into, you know, give them some examples, you know, maybe give them one eternal thing, one worldly thing, or one thing that's a momentary, value or something like that, you know, just so they know, oh, okay, so maybe then, you know what I mean? It'll jog their memories and stuff like that. So,
and just helping them, to understand this has no value, this does have value, so that when they're encountered by that temptation, they have already an understanding, not that it'll make it not make them invincible to it or anything, but they'll have an understanding of where their value actually is.
And they'll have that understanding of, like you're saying, like they will know, oh, this is something that isn't as valuable as this that I have.
This is one of those momentary things.
Yes.
You know?
That's exactly it. This is one of those momentary values. This is an eternal value. And I think that's important to help them identify.
It is a vital distinction.
And I mean, we're going through the book of 1 Peter on Sundays. There's loads of eternal values that are given to us in there. So if you need help of looking through those, go to 1 Peter 1. There's loads. And I think the next question you can do is, one, I think read chapter 25 with your student again, because I think, you know, especially for the students who weren't here, refresh their memory, you know, for them to hear the story and read it in scripture. But then also go to Romans chapter 1, 22 and 23. Now, I didn't read this verse, you know, as we were teaching and stuff, because we were already almost out of time. But I think that this helps with the idea of exchanging something of huge eternal value for something of way, way less to zero value. And I think, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but the picture is there. And it'd be great if you guys could read it together. And then after you read it, ask them, why do you think it's so easy to trade these things of eternal value for things of less value? And that's really getting at identifying the motive for going after the soup. You know what I mean? Like for Esau, the reason why it was so easy is because he was exhausted. He was hungry. And he was so hungry that this was already made. He didn't want to have to go through the, you know, I'm speculating at this point, but he didn't want to have to go through the work of making his own food. This was already made.
It was right in front of him.
It was right in front of him. And so this really helps to identify like the motives to going towards other things that are way, way, way less valuable.
Yeah,
You
so
know what I
that you can equip your student to identify what those things are, identify why you'd be susceptible to them, so that you're ready for it, you know? Like,
Yeah.
like they'll know then, okay, this is momentary. Okay, on top of that, why am I being pulled toward it in
Yes.
this moment? You know, like equipping them to be ready for that.
Yeah.
You're gonna help them be so much more prepared for situations where momentary value objects pop up.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Because they'll be able to identify what it is and why it's drawing them in.
Exactly.
And they'll be able to go, okay, I should take the extra second of time to skip this easy path
Yeah.
of, you know, this moment of value, so that I don't trade in any of these eternal things that I
Yeah.
have, you know?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly it. And parents, this is not easy to do.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
not gonna be the easiest discussion.
no. But you can do it in a way that it is, again, doesn't feel like an interrogation. You're not assuming they're doing something bad.
Yeah.
You're not, you know, whatever. You guys are just having a spiritual discussion on things of eternal value and things of momentary value. And I would say word it that way, momentary value.
Yeah.
That way they, again, don't feel like it's something bad.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be something bad. It is, there are things that are bad that,
Yeah.
of course, we can trade in our eternal values for, but it's more so of things that are not really bad, just momentarily good. But you don't want to trade an eternal thing
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, at any point. So,
Yeah. And I would say give your examples first,
yes.
to again negate the feeling of it
Yeah.
being like, what have you been doing? You know, like
I
give-
see what you're
yeah,
doing.
give your examples of what you see as eternal and what you see as momentary, and give your example of why you think people fall into it. Again,
Yeah.
this is a great moment for testimony to teach with your testimony.
All of these conversation starters are great moments for testimony.
Yeah.
Huge opportunity for that.
Yeah.
So yeah. So will you leave you guys with that? It hopefully it doesn't sound like a lot, but if it is, that's okay, because we're not going to have youth group next week. So you have double the time.
You have 2 weeks
to do it.
focus on this.
You know what I mean? And I would say literally do it with your students, because I think this is just so important. I really do. Like, if there's anything that is going to help your student, like as they grow up, go to college, go to work, do all these different things, go out into the world where there's going to be temptation everywhere, and they're not going to be shielded under the parents anymore and under the youth pastor and the leaders anymore.
Yeah.
What's going to help is them to be able to identify what is an eternal thing, what is a momentary thing,
Yeah.
and why it's so easy to go for the momentary thing, and how I can remember to still stay in the eternal thing.
Yeah. That's
And-
exactly it.
So thank you guys for watching. There will not be a conversation starter next week, because we're not going to have youth group next week.
Yeah.
But again, you have double the time to do these things, and we pray you guys enjoy your Easter. Hope to see you here Good Friday, and we look forward to the next one. Hello, parents. This is Pastor Mario. Thank you guys for joining us for this week's conversation starter. If you want more ways that you can engage with your youth, you can check out the other conversation starters here on my side. Thank you guys for joining us. Hope you guys are doing well.